forest was already holding its breath when she stepped into the clearing, unaware that one quiet choice, made in the heat and silence, would change 2 lives forever. The heat had settled into the clearing long before the sun reached its highest point, pressing down like a hell breath that refused to release. Dust clung to the air, unmoving, as if even the wind had decided to stay away. At the base of an old tree, its roots exposed and cracked, a leopard lay bound by a length of iron chain that pulled tight each time he shifted. The metal had worn into his neck, flattening the fur and marking the skin beneath. A silent record of days spent pulling against something that would not give. He no longer fought it. His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven rhythms, each breath sounding like effort rather than instinct. When he lifted his head, it was only briefly, just enough to scan the empty space around him before gravity returned him to the dirt. The muscles built for explosive strength had softened with exhaustion. His tongue lay dry against his teeth. His eyes, once sharp and watchful, followed the slow crawl of shadows instead of prey. The forest offered no comfort. Birds kept their distance. Insects hovered and vanished. The ground beneath him was warm, almost hot, and offered no relief to aching joints. He had learned the shape of the chain, the limit of its reach, the way it scraped and rattled when he moved too far. Eventually, stillness became easier than hope. He rested his head against the earth and waited without knowing what for. The sound of footsteps did not register at first. It arrived softly, out of place, a human rhythm where none should exist. A woman emerged between the trees and stopped, so suddenly her body leaned back as if pulled by an unseen hand. Her eyes fixed on the spotted form near the tree, and her breath caught high in her chest. This was not a moment she had prepared for. The story she had heard all her life surged forward at once, filling her mind with warnings. She stood frozen, aware of how small she felt in that open space. The leopard's ears twitched. Slowly, he raised his head. The movement was heavy, deliberate, costing more than it should have. He did not bare his teeth. He did not coil to strike. He simply looked at her, eyes dull with fatigue, yet painfully aware. A low sound escaped him. Not a threat, but something closer to a plea. Thin and broken, shaped by thirst and time. The woman felt fear tighten her stomach, but it did not move her feet. She saw the chain cutting into his neck. She saw the way his ribs showed when he breathed. In that instant, the animal before her was not a symbol of danger, but life unraveling in plain sight. The clearing seemed to shrink around them, holding only 2 beings locked in a shared moment of recognition. He watched her without expectation. She stood without turning away. Between them, the space filled with something fragile and unmistakably human. The sun continued its slow passage overhead, indifferent to what had unfolded beneath it. Sweat traced a line down the woman's spine, yet she remained still, listening to the quiet between breaths. The leopard blinked once, then again, as if confirming she was real. In that pause, nothing was decided and nothing was promised. There was only presence, shared and unspoken, resting gently over the clearing. It did not feel like rescue yet. It felt like witnessing, and for now, that was enough. Both remained grounded in silence, as the forest watched without judgment, quietly. She remained where she was, aware of how unnatural her stillness felt inside a body wired for flight. Every instinct urged her to retreat, to put distance between herself and the animal whose strength she understood even in his weakened state. She had seen leopards before, fleeting shadows slipping through trees, powerful and untouchable. This one did not move like that. He lay with his head low, watching her through half-lidded eyes, conserving what little energy remained. The chain clinked softly as he shifted his forepaw, testing the ground rather than challenging it. The sound tightened something in her chest. She noticed the way his breathing paused between exhales, as though he needed to gather himself before each one. He did not snarl or bare his teeth. Instead, his gaze followed her hands, curious but wary, tracking her smallest movements. The silence between them felt deliberate, held together by restraint on both sides. Her thoughts moved in circles. She calculated distance, escape routes, the speed at which things could turn. She imagined the sudden violence his body was capable of if fear overtook him. Yet every time she looked at the raw skin beneath the chain, the calculations dissolved. Compassion crept in quietly. not his bravery, but his presence. She lowered herself to a crouch, careful to keep her movements slow and predictable, mindful of how quickly the situation could fracture. The bottle in her pack felt louder than it should have. Plastic shifted, water sloshed. Small sounds amplified by the clearing's stillness. The leopard flinched at first, muscles tightening beneath his coat, but he did not pull away. His nose lifted, testing the air. Thirst overrode caution, and she recognized that surrender in a subtle tilt of his head. She poured water into a broad leaf resting on the ground, the stream trembling as it left her hands. He dragged himself forward until the chain stopped him short,
Don't
then
move
lowered his
suddenly.
mouth to the leaf.
We have the situation
The sound
under
of him
control.
drinking was
Just
hurried
stay right
and
where you
uneven.
are.
A body reclaiming something it had been denied. She watched without moving, heart racing, counting the seconds between swallows. When he finished, he lifted his head and looked at her again, something softer settling behind his eyes. It was not trust yet, but it was absence of fear. She stayed longer than she had planned, then longer still. Time lost its edges as she remained seated on the warm earth, sharing the same quiet space. The leopard
We're here to
shifted
help.
into a more comfortable
Everything
position,
is going to be all right.
resting on his side.
We'll take it slow,
one eye
just
still
stay
open.
calm.
She mirrored his stillness, learning the rhythm of his breathing, letting her
You're
own
doing
slow
so
to
well,
match it.
my beauty.
In doing so, she relinquished control,
Almost
choosing
finished,
observation
nice and
over
clean
action.
Now.
The forest resumed its subtle movements. Insects returned. A bird called once from somewhere high above. The leopard's tail flicked, stirring dust, and then went still again. The distance between them had not vanished, but it no longer felt like a barrier. It felt like a boundary both respected. She did not reach for him. She did not speak. She simply remained, offering water and calm in equal measure. By the time she rose to leave, the clearing felt altered, as though something fragile had been placed there and left intact. The leopard watched her go, not following, not retreating. Their connection was
It's
quiet,
okay,
incomplete,
big boy.
yet
You're
undeniably
doing so
real.
well.
It did not demand
Almost
more.
finished now.
It existed as it was,
Good
held gently
cat.
between species, grounded in patience, restraint, and the shared language of survival. Help arrived quietly, without spectacle, as though the forest itself had decided the moment was right. Two rescuers stepped into the clearing with careful movements, reading the space before they spoke. The leopard lifted his head at the unfamiliar scent, eyes alert but calm, his body no longer braced for struggle. The woman stood slightly back, her presence steady rather than commanding, watching as the chain was examined and gently loosened. When the metal finally fell away, it landed in the dirt with a dull sound that seemed smaller than expected. The leopard did not run. He shifted his weight experimentally, feeling the absence where restraint had lived for days. His muscles trembled, not from fear but from effort, learning freedom again one cautious movement at a time. The rescuers worked efficiently, cleaning the raw skin at his neck, applying salve. Speaking in low tones meant more for reassurance than instruction. He accepted the touch without resistance, eyes half closed, breathing evening out as pain eased into manageable sensation. Recovery unfolded slowly. There were days of rest, measured meals, and careful observation as strength returned in increments too small to notice at first. The leopard's coat regained its depth, each rosette sharpening as dust and exhaustion gave way to health. When a woman visited, he acknowledged her with a soft shift of posture, a familiarity that required no closeness. She sat nearby, never reaching, content to share the quiet that had once saved them both. Time did its work without ceremony. The leopard's movements grew fluid again, confidence returning with every stretch and deliberate step. His eyes followed birds beyond the enclosure, instinct awakening fully. The woman sensed a change and welcomed it, understanding that healing was not meant to bind him to her. Their connection remained present but light, existing in recognition rather than need. The day of release arrived under an open sky. The transport carried him deep into protected land where the forest widened and the air smelled of rain and growth. When the door opened, he paused, testing the ground, listening to the unfamiliar chorus of freedom. He stepped out with quiet authority, tail low, muscles rolling beneath his skin. He did not look back immediately. When he did, it was brief, a shared acknowledgement rather than farewell. He disappeared into the trees without haste, leaving no sound behind. The woman remained where she was until the space felt complete again. In the weeks that followed, she returned to her routines, carrying the memory gently, without longing for proof or continuation. What they had shared did not ask for more. It existed fully in what had been given and received. Distance did not diminish it. Acceptance settled in, calm and enduring, like the forest after footsteps fade. She understood then that some encounters are meant to change shape over time, not remain present. The leopard would hunt, fail, learn, and thrive beyond any human witness. She would remember the weight of silence, the sound of water poured into a leaf, the way fear softened into care. Those memories would surface unexpectedly, steadying her during ordinary days. Nothing more was required. Their story did not need repetition or proof. It lived quietly, carried forward by two lives moving separately yet altered. In accepting that truth, she felt gratitude instead of loss, a calm assurance that kindness, once offered, never truly disappears. It remained as a quiet measure of who she was becoming, a reminder that compassion can exist without ownership, and that freedom, respected fully, is its own form of love for both the giver and receiver.